when I asked you to think, if you're getting a thought, like a negative thought, actually examine that. And I want you to think, now, is that a fear-based thought or is that a thought of love? Because if it's our intuition, it will always be something loving and people will be able to benefit from it. If it's our ego, it's solipsistic and it's all about ourselves. So I think it's that discernment. It's about, okay, how does this thought make me feel? Who'll benefit from it? Is this like just a fear-based thought? Is it just anger? Is it rage? Is it something I can do something about? Then it's the ego talking. But if it's something that you can say, actually, you know what? Yeah, I can benefit from that. It's about listening to those hunches and just learning the discernment between the two. Because one will keep us safe and happy, right? One is fulfilling. The other is fear. And it's about knowing the difference between.
Graham Norton, welcome to FEAR Unzipped. It's so great to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Sandi. I'm delighted to be here.
And we get to
Long
listen
time
to
no see.
long time. We get to listen to that lovely Dublin accent too. So Graham and I know each other. I've taken some courses from him. He is a psychotherapist. He also is a very astute tarot reader and many other things, and a medium and many, many other things. But so I have the luxury of knowing you and being super comfortable with you. But Graham, let's jump in and let's start with your backstory and what you were doing before you became a psychotherapist and before you became a world-renowned tarot reader. Can you give us some backstory?
So I suppose we should start at the beginning. So I always read the tarot from the time I was a small child, but I always envisaged that I had a different destiny. And I used to be an opera singer, and then I was a jazz singer. So I trained to be a singer and a musician from a very young age too. And tarot and mediumship and all that was always in my family, but it was always just something we did. It wasn't something that one would ever make a living at. I mean, my grandmother was the local soothsayer, if you like. Everybody used to pop down to her house, chat their tea leaves read or her cards or whatever. So it was always in the family. But it wasn't until later life that I went into this full time. And how it always happened by a circuitous route. So when I was sitting in London, I moved over to London and I was studying there after I finished my primary degree, which was music. And I'm sitting on a friend's couch. And of course, naturally, like attracts like. So I attracted all the psychics and stuff like that. I always was surrounded by these people. And I was sitting on the couch of this lady called Lily Gain. And she's saying, no, you're supposed to be like a really famous psychic when you're in your 40s. And I'm kind of like, no, I'm a diva, darling. This is just not going to happen. Forget that. Like, no, I'm supposed to be a singer. That's all I'm doing. I'm like, well, here we are. So I think life has, a way of making you smile. But so I for always running from it. But every time I went and got my cards done, they're like, you're supposed to be doing this for a living. You're supposed to be doing this for a living. So when I was in my late 20s, I had the first of 3 strokes and I'd open heart surgery twice. I had a ventricular appendectomy and a cardiac maze. And even then I was going to see a psychic healer and he was like, no, you're supposed to be doing this. And I'm like, no, I'm getting back to the stage. As soon as I'm out of this, I'm on stage again, forget it. No, this is my destiny. I'm supposed to be a superstar. Yeah, I have diva written on my clothes. Anyway, the universe laughed. And so we went on and to be fair, I had an okay career as a singer. I sang all over the place. It was great. But I was getting to the point in my life where I just didn't want to do it anymore. So I'd also had a couple of dreadful losses in my life. I had a relationship and my partner took his life when I was 34. And kind of made me begin to see things differently, and I wanted to help people. Of course, it took me a little while longer to get over my diva attitude. And it was actually just around the time of the pandemic. So I'm just going to sound really terrible to everybody. But for me, the pandemic was a good thing in many ways. I know it was a horrible time, so please don't think I'm making light of that, but just personally for me, because it actually gave me the luxury of time to stop. And I refocused in my life because I couldn't sing, so I couldn't work. So I had to think, well, what am I going to do in my life? So I decided to go back to college, and I was going to originally become a lecturer in music, because I had to. I was tired of performing around the place, and I just said, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I went along and I was thinking, okay, what will I do my thesis on? Oh, trauma and the voice. That's a really good one, because so many people hold tension in their body and stuff like this from when they're singing because of traumas they've experienced throughout life and can damage the voice. So I kind of sat there and I thought, that's really interesting, but maybe I should get a qualification in psychotherapy if I'm going to be doing anything like this. So I ended up going back to college and getting masters in psychotherapy and counselling. And again, the old fate, go out what you want. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, what will I do my thesis on? And the next thing it turned into the psychic medium and their potential to help or hinder the therapeutic process. So I ended up thinking, oh yeah, do you know what? I better get like some sort of piece of paper so people just don't think I'm some looper whose nanny taught him to read the cards. So I saw an advertisement for Richard Knight doing a 6-week tarot course. Now I could read the cards, so I wasn't doing it for that. It was just literally to have the piece of paper to stick in the back of the thesis. And so I signed up for that, and he looked at me and said, where did you come from? And the next thing, I started getting tarot people coming from all over the place for readings. I have now a client list that extends around the world. I have a waiting list for people. It's all very good. So it clearly was the right path. And in the meantime, I became a psychotherapist, and I discovered spiritual psychology. So, or transversal psychology, which was totally up my street. And then positive psychology and the world that I want to live in. And I specialize really working with young people, sort of between the ages of 16 and 18, a little bit sometimes on either side. I do work with adults as well in private practice, but I have a muggle job where I do Monday to Friday, 9 to 1. I do psychotherapy, and in the afternoon I see all my private patients for my gooey ooey work, which is what we call my spiritual work. And I read the cards, or I do mediumship sittings, and I teach, as you all know, Sandi. So I've been very blessed. The Divine Mother, whatever you want to call her, has said, Graham, you know what? You've made yourself for enough. Let's a little bit of happiness now. It's all good. So and my biggest thing is that all I want to do is help people find the light inside themselves. And because there's a lot of darkness in the world, and particularly with our young people, they're the people that we need to help. And I think the pandemic has been so traumatizing for so many people. And we're seeing in where I work with the young people, how unfocused they've been, how lost they are, and that sense of connection and those skills that we would have developed when we were younger coming together, they just don't have them. And it's trying to build that sense of community. And then it's by taking the focus off of themselves. And once they see that there are other people like them, you see them blossom, and it's wonderful. So
yeah, they're not alone. They're part of a community. They're not alone. And sometimes we just think, oh my gosh, nobody's feeling what we're feeling. It's really comforting to know that there are other people that can see us and hear us, and they're going through this stuff too. Do you think that the heart situation that you had in your 20s was sort of your guidance, or somebody saying, hey, you need to restructure here, take a break, and maybe because you're needed for this kind of work?
Yeah. Do you know, I sometimes think that, and I always remember, because it's really gas, I can't remember the guy's name, but he was an English psychic surgeon, and he was over at this little shop in Cambridge, and I remember a friend of mine sent me to see him, and he said to me, and this is very interesting because I'm into manifestation, things like that, and I remember he was saying to me, your problem is, Graham, you're too worried about your singing career. And I went, oh, interesting. And he said to me, your gift is once you know something in your inner knowing, it manifests in the world. You know your heart is going to be absolutely fine, and this operation is not worrying you. And I said, no, it's not. It really isn't. And it wasn't. And he said, but you're focusing on the wrong things. And I thought, exactly. And then you think about how I am now, and I think about all the manifestation and the neuroscience of manifestation and the power of belief. Boom. It just literally, everything just falls into place, And just as a side, that same lady, when I was sitting on her couch, when she was telling me I was going to be a psychic, right? So you may remember this from when we joined up with Richard Knight. He sent us all this BBC documentary, right? And 10 minutes into that documentary, my friend Lily was being interviewed. And I thought, well, that's a sign. And I hadn't seen her in like about 15, 16 years. So that was just like, I was sitting there going, the universe and the signs. So I do think that my heart problems was a precursor to where I am now. Because now it's like, if you think about the heart being removed from the body and being repaired, like we're sitting there thinking to ourselves, yeah, that's your heart, your pathways need to be opened again so that you can feel and feel for the world. And I think I think possibly it was that moment to stop.
I think part of it too is the diva part, Graham, that you wanted to be famous, you wanted to be, and we know that when we get, a lot of people feel that way. And we know that when we get into our ego, we just can't really become who we really are because our focus is elsewhere. It's really not what our authentic self is. So you're kind of, to me, it seems you're lucky that you went through the diva stage, you went through that ego thing, because now you can really relate to a lot of people and you can see where they're coming from, and then you can see their authentic self. A lot of my guests went through some sort of a trauma before their brilliant, intuitive abilities came out or their purpose came out. I really hope that we don't have to go through a trauma to find our authentic self. Can you say something about that?
I don't think we necessarily do. I mean, I do think that we as a society, I think perhaps that the pandemic was our collective trauma, because we all became so disconnected and we're all looking for that sense of connection now. And I do think if you look at people and how they're interacting with one another, I think the ego has come so far to the forefront, particularly with social media and stuff, and everybody just wants to be famous for the sake of being famous. And I think maybe the pandemic happened to sort of reset us on a sort of like a global scale. I know that sounds terrible because, I mean, it was an awful thing, but I do sometimes think maybe we needed to be reminded of that, that we need to care for our neighbours. And I think particularly over the last 50 years, systematically, the systems that we had in place for bringing us here, like church, spirituality, all this stuff, were removed from society. Like society has had to collapse because you used to go and you used to care for your neighbour, you used to see your neighbour, and you used to go out the street and stuff. Now you don't have that interaction anymore. And I'm not saying that you need to go to churches or anything, because like religions and stuff, spirituality, yes, religion not necessarily. That's my own personal belief, so don't come witch hunting me because there's lots of spells in my house to protect me. Just tell everybody do that now. But I do think it's that, like, when we don't have that sense of community. I mean, years ago, like, I think about this a lot because my parents are still churchgoers. I can't go because they set me on fire. And but we'd have the church, where we'd go and we'd meet our neighbours at mass or whatever, and you'd have that sense of community. That's all gone now because everybody's out working and trying to earn money, and capitalism has sort of taken that all away from us, and so we don't have that time to sit with one another. And I think that's where there's so many problems in society at the moment, and particularly I see it amongst the young people, and that's why I kind of have like little groups in working, which is interesting. Where the children, like we do shamanic retreats and stuff like that to get them in touch with either their inner goddess or their inner warrior, and we bring them to on these journeys to meet their ancestors and stuff, and they're all going through a collective experience, and they all sit and talk about it, and it's quite beautiful, and to hear what they're talking about, and it's that sense of like, oh my God, there are other people going through this with me. I'm not alone, So I think, and using the spiritual path for that is really powerful.
So this is what really intrigues me and I find fascinating and beyond exciting, is that I'm seeing that traditional psychotherapy is getting merged a bit with metaphysics. And I'm sure back in the day that would have been absolutely out of the question. But are you finding insight, because you're trained as a psychotherapist?
Yes.
What was the take on the spirituality part and the metaphysical part in all of that?
Well, my own personal view is that modern science is now beginning to catch up with what spirituality already knew. And I think with the likes of Transversal, which is an empirical science, the Transversal model, where you could test for this, that they're beginning to now see that, new neural pathways can be created in the brain through meditation and MBCT and all that kind of stuff. So we have all of these things. Science is actually showing us that this exists. And I think the problem was, as Jung put it, we've kind of forgotten that the brain is the servant of the heart and not the other way around. And after all, when we're born, when we're in our mother's wombs, the first organ to come into being is the heart and not the brain. And which we know, the heart has more emotional receptors now. We've proven that, it has more cells for containing memory and stuff like this. And, there's so much out there that we're beginning to, I'm going to say, remember, right? I prefer to use the term remember than prove, because we already knew it, but because we were trying to be, intellectual, we forgot it. Let's put it that way. And so we had to have a language to keep people engaged. And so I thank God, really terrible, because every academic in the world is going to look at me going, bad way. I call them the waffly people. So, and I think sometimes that we need to stop over intellectualizing things and allow ourselves to feel. I think that should be the primary engagement with this sort of work. And I think that neuroscience and stuff is now catching up with what we've already known for thousands of years, and it can prove it. Therefore, it's becoming legitimized. And I think that's been a wonderful thing, say, in the last sort of 20, 30 years, particularly since the time of Thomas Roth in the 60s, and which I know is like 50 years ago, but 50, 60 years ago. So, but it's still an emerging thing. And like, we have sharper machines now that can, MDR scans and NFR steps and things like that. We can show the brain and how it understands things. So I think that's helping an awful lot, because it can be legitimized and it's no longer considered to be pseudoscience.
And when you are doing your therapy sessions and with these young people, and then you bring in tarot, how does tarot complement a psychotherapy session?
Well, I very rarely bring in tarot with the young people, because what I would use is oracle cards at the end of each session. Now, I do use it with some of my private clients if they're open to it. But what I would say to them is, okay, let's sum up what we're going. And I particularly use Judith Orloff's Empath Empowering deck. And we'll pull out a card and I'll say to them, look, I said, I want you to shuffle it and I want you to think about what we've discussed today. And without fail, they always produce a card that has a message with the theme of what we've been discussing for their session. And they find it fascinating. Now, we do sometimes play with the cards and go, okay, well, as I do this with adults, I'll say, like a Rorschach card, the ink blots, I will show them the card and say, well, what do you think? What do the pictures mean to you? Is there anything standing out to you? Why do you think that's standing out to you? Because remember, our brain understands archetypes, understands symbols on a primal level. So it gives them the language then to come forward to talk about their problems, because they're slightly disassociated from it, because they're kind of like, well, what do you think that means? And where could you relate that to in your life? So you're able to use it in those contexts to help them to open up and think,
Yeah, I find tarot. So yes, I took Richard Knight's course too, as you know. And tarot was the last thing on the planet I thought that I would do. I wasn't even really on Facebook. It popped up in my emails. I thought, why not? It was during the pandemic. So I thought, why not? It's something that'll be interesting and fun. And what I found, I gravitated right to it, because it opened my intuitive abilities. And what it is a conduit. It's not fortune telling. It's not going to tell you your future, which I think is important for people to know. But it does flash, it shines a flashlight in perhaps a direction to go to or not go to. And then I met you, because during, while I was doing that, we're on Facebook groups, people are going, this guy Graham, you've got to have him do a reading for you, this guy Graham. And then that connected me to you. And then I was in courses with you, and then in your mediumship circle, which I think we've done some really powerful work in that with people from around the world.
Mm-hmm.
But can you talk a little bit about tarot and how it's not so woo-woo, really?
Not really, no, not anymore. I mean, even Jung himself kind of said he wished he'd had more time to study the tarot. And it is, I mean, tarot, like, yes, it has a bad rap that it's used as as a fortune telling device. But as I would always tell people, okay, well, yes, it can be used for divination, but the idea is that if you're going to use it as a tool for divination, you have to make a decision to go down that path. Otherwise, it's just kind of signposting, so it's ultimately your choice. You still have free will. But when I use the tarot board, and I think its primary and most powerful use, this is a tool for self-reflection, because it does develop our intuition. Our intuition is there to guide us, right? We all have intuition, every single one of us, that little voice that tells us when somebody's about to ring up the phone, and you know whose voice it is before it, it's those things. And it can be developed. So when you had the likes of Aleister Crowley and the Rider-Waite-Smith people, Arthur Waite and Pamela Cotton-Smith, when they were designing their cards, they loaded them with symbols to get people to think about what was going on, right? And so it is purely, that's all tarot is. It's the language of symbols. It's nothing else, And yes, it can be used to say, you can go down this path, like, oh yes, but you can make a choice to say, oh yes, I'll go out today and have a relationship or something. It can help you with these kind of decisions, because if somebody will come to me, as I have often had, it's like, oh Graham, will I ever find love? And I'm like, putting out the cards. And I go, well, the signs here are yes, but what are you going to do about it? It's your decision. You need to either get on an app or leave the house. Love's not going to come knocking on the door. Do you know what I mean? It's like those kind of things. It's, as we know, like the brain has the RAS. And once the RAS understands something, the reticular activated system, once that understands a symbol, our brain will actively seek it out and draw it towards us. And we know this from neuroscience. And I think that's how the tarot works in its beauty, is that, once we start to kind of get our mind focused by using and understanding the language of symbols and what symbols were being shown, we can then start to manifest what it is we're looking for. It's like, I do an exercise with people that will often come to me and say to me, Graham, oh, I'd love a partner. I really would. And okay, so let's talk about this for a second. Okay. I want you to list out the qualities in a partner that you truly want. Okay? So tell me what it is. And I mean qualities. I don't care, what he looks like, whatever, because you're not going to go for somebody who doesn't float your boat, like, let's be fair. Okay? So I want you to give me the qualities. So they'll come out in the list and we'll go to the list. And I said, okay, now what I want you to tell me is, how in your life are you showing up with these qualities? Why are you displaying that? What are you willing to give? Because that's part of this whole manifestation thing. It's like, who are you? Because like attracts like. And if you understand what it is you're putting out into the universe, you'll draw that to you. So if you want someone who's loyal and someone who's committed and someone who is, strong-willed, blah, 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 whatever it is that you truly desire, okay? Great. Where are you showing it in your life? How are you showing kindness to other people if that's the qualities that you're looking for? How are you showing assertiveness? Where are you being assertive? Because once your brain has an example of what it is that you're looking for, it will start to weed out the trash and you'll find what you're looking for and bring it towards you. That's how it works.
So I often wonder, what are we doing wrong that's preventing us to really manifest? That you keep hearing about manifestation and but there's like a stop sign. So what would be a great thing, and that's a great example that you just gave, that we can do if we really want to manifest?
Well, Neville Goddard talked about living in the end. And so the thing is, we're not to question the journey, right? Because it's not up to us to figure out the journey. We just have to ask. It's a bit like, asking it is given the Abraham Hicks stuff. It's about having that faith, but it's like truly knowing what it is that you want. And what I would say to people is, it's a bit like, is an ego desire or is it a desire? And this is I think where the truth of the matter comes in, because if it's desire, as I tell people, is like, think about the word desire. Like, think about the etymology of that word. That word comes from diazire, of the divine, right? Word of God, okay? So I want you to think about that. So you're born, your soul wants this, right? You're born with this inherent desire, where the ego wants, is like, oh, I have to be the star, I have to be this, that, and the other. But also, the ego is not our friend. The ego is there to protect us from danger, okay? So if it's a true desire, right, it will fulfill you. But if it's an ego thing, it won't. So I'm going to give you this wonderful analogy that I stolen from Lee Harris from Electro, went to one day with him, and it's the Ferrari, right? So that there is nothing wrong with desiring things, right? There really isn't, because if you're allowing the divine to experience it through you, okay? So that's your soul mission. So if it's a pure desire, and there's a caveat to this, but I'll get to that in a minute, okay? So I want you to think about this. Say, for example, you come to me and go, Graham, I want a Ferrari. What says I? What colour? Red. Great. Why? Oh, it's sexy. Okay. So if you want that car because you want the pleasure of driving a red, sexy Ferrari, because it's something you've always desired and you want it, knock yourself out. You'll save, you'll buy the Ferrari eventually, please God, and you'll drive around, and a couple of weeks, you'll be like, yeah, I've done that now, tick the box, boom, that's gone. Right. Now, if you want that because it's an ego desire, because you want to show people in your life who've been mean to you that you've made it and you're a big thing now, you're a big time star, look at me driving around in my Ferrari, aren't I amazing? It will never fulfill you. Because what will happen is you'll get your Ferrari, you'll drive around in it, people will not pay the blind bit of notice to you. Not a bit. Because they're too wrapped up in their own world, and you won't get an emotional hit, so you won't get the endorphin rush, and you'll be completely left empty, and you'll be on to the next thing because it's not fulfilling your soul. So that's the difference between a soul desire and then an ego want. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it doesn't have anything to do with materialism.
No, it really
because
doesn't.
If you want a Ferrari, go for it. I say go for it. I love fast cars, fast motorcycles, fast.
And this is something that we all have to think about this too, right? Like we're all constantly being bombarded by society and social media, and thinking that we should all be like, tan-toned and gorgeous and driving around in Ferraris and living in billion-dollar houses. Most people don't want that. Most people just want to be content and happy, right? And another thing is, I always ask people to think about it. When you get what you want, and this is the circle for manifestation, right? This is the truth of manifestation. When you get what you want, who are you going to help with it? Because it's not about you, because otherwise you're blocking the flow of abundance. And abundance is an energy that we're all entitled to. So when you get what you want, what are you going to do with it? So like, for example, I do with the kids in work, I do an exercise that I got from the Shami, and I find it really fascinating. It's called the 3 MIQs, the 3 most important questions. So I asked them, okay, write me a list of what you want to experience in life. And I say to them, I don't care what it is. If you want a yacht in the Bahamas, your own private island, I don't care. It's whatever, right? Most of them never like that. And then I'll ask, okay, when you get what you want, okay, in order to get it, what is it that you're going to do? Who are you going to become? So they list out this, and like, I have to go to the gym, I have to work out, or I have to learn more, I have to do more study, I have to do blah, 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 blah. My family, my friends, in the next column, the final one, who's going to benefit from what you have once you get it? And they'll go, my friends, my family, my future family, blah, 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 the people I'll help through my work, blah, 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 blah. So again, what's that bringing us back to? The connection. That's the thing we all need, the sense of connection to help us heal. And that's what's missing. Because even if you think about the Holy Bible or all our religious texts, it's all about putting your neighbor first. Love one another as I have loved you. All of the sacred texts want you to love everybody without judgment.
It's so true, because when you do something that brings you joy and it brings joy to somebody else, it's exponentially more joyful.
Exactly.
And go ahead.
No. Well,
I was just going to say what the pandemic did was it created this space of trauma and fear. And then we had to figure out, okay, what is it that I really want to do? Who do I really want to be with? What is it that I really want? And community was something that I think came out for a lot of people. Now, there were a lot of people that loved having their alone time in their space, but in that case, they were probably communing in nature a lot. And that is their community. So you don't really need the people, but just your sense, if it's animals, if it's nature, or if it's people. But we are so connected. And doing this podcast, Graham, there are so many synchronicities and signs that I've received that I just go, I'm getting winks from the universe every single day. And I just go, okay, I get it. That is really amazing. And that's really funny. I had one yesterday. It's just so wild. What a wild ride. So your students, what are some of the things that they are struggling with a bit?
it's very, very interesting, Sandy. And you're going to look at me like I've 25 heads when I say this, right? So clearly, as most of your listeners will have gathered by now, I might be a little bit sparkly. So if you'd have asked me 25 years ago, possibly even a little bit longer than that, if I would have had sympathy for young heterosexual men, I would have said no, because those people made my life misery, right? In my grand old age of 45, what I've realized is I actually do, and life is very, very tough for these boys because they are being bombarded with signals, right? Particularly, and girls too. Like I'll go back to that in a second. That the boys they don't know where they are emotionally, and they're so isolated because they have to keep presenting this uber masculine image to the world, right? To keep the girlfriends happy, they have to be providers. They have to do this. They have to this, and they also have to be extremely sensitive when the girlfriend wants it and whatever. So it's all of this confusion, right? That's bombarding them, and they don't know where they are, and so a lot of them are struggling with a sense of identity and also a sense of purpose. Okay. Because they don't know where they are in the world and what they're supposed to be doing. And so that's a huge issue. And that's across both sexes, okay? Because the girls are equally under pressure to be massively performing and academically brilliant and blah, 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 blah. And then they also have to be, like supermodels, and blah, 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 blah. So it's all of this. I think social media, what it is compounding depression in a lot of our young people, okay? And also, because they also can't distinguish between what's false and what's real a lot of the time. Like, they will show me these videos on their phones. Apparently, once a 16-year-old shows you their phone, you're in. Apparently, this is big respect, So they show me these videos and go like, oh, look at this, and I want this, I want to do that. And everything is based on the material, right? And so it's my point of view is to try and get them to think beyond that and kind of go, that's not real. That's not how you live. And so it's to sort of deconstruct this image that they're supposed to be moving towards and get them to think, no, Stephen, you need to be centered, you need to be happy, you need to be authentic to yourself. So a lot of my work is about helping them find themselves and be steady in themselves that, even though they're getting all these messages, they actually go, is this important to me? Is this what I really want? Mm-hmm. Is this who I want to be? Is this where I want to go in life? So it's deconstructing the narrative for me and giving them control over their own lives.
It's also, how does that make you feel? Because you look at social media and you look at something and somebody's having this glorious life, which behind the scenes is probably not at all the case. No. And it makes you feel, you look at that and you go, oh my gosh, my life is terrible. My life is miserable. I don't have friends. I don't have this. I don't have a boyfriend. I don't have a girlfriend, blah, blah, blah. I think that I look at everything like, how does it make me feel? And when I did this podcast before, and in the thought stages of this podcast, this is what a thought looks like. Here you go, right here. I was thinking, how do I want it to make me feel? It's not about that was the only thing that I was thinking about. And of course, I want joy. I want to feel community, really. That is a huge one for me. I want to feel community. I want to feel that no one person is better than another person, although one might have a gift that I don't have, but then I have something too to contribute. These were things, Graham, that were so important to me, and is what I'm hoping this space will, exude. We're all in this together, and it's not easy for anybody.
No, none of us are getting out of here alive. So why make everybody else's life more difficult? And if we all started to work together, it would be such a beautiful place. And then we understand this, that if groups, like we know this from science, that, groups that get together in prayer and stuff, they can manifest things. We know this, we can affect weather patterns, we can do all this when we come together. So like, if we start to remember that, and we start to bring that collective consciousness together, we could move mountains, And I do think this is part of it. It's about realizing that we are all together. We're all in this together, and we all have to live on the same planet, And this is sort of one of the things I kind of disagree with us all having individual experiences. We are all, yes, experiencing the world in our own unique way, but at the same time, we also have to cohabit. And my right to exist is no greater than your right to exist, or vice versa, And so if we understand that, we all have to cohabit and coexist, it would be such a beautiful world. I mean, actually, as I said, all the sacred texts are telling us this on and on. Love one another, and that's no greater love hath a man, blah, 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 blah. And, and I think this is why there's such an awakening on the planet at the moment. People are waking up to this and remembering, like the works of Joseph Murphy and Neville Goddard are coming back into fashion, and other mystics who wrote all this stuff, but had been so corrupted. It's getting back to the essence of that. I mean, as you know, Sandi, that one of my little projects at the moment is taking sacred texts and sort of reinterpreting as a tool for psychological help. Particularly around manifestation and self-belief, and so I'm kind of working on that at the moment in a book, as we discussed before, and I think this is where we're going. It's about finding a new spiritual path that encompasses everybody,
What are some things you think we can do to increase our intuition, to really be aware that, or what the difference is between our intuition and maybe our ego talking to us, or our own thoughts?
That's a tricky one. So, well, as you know, when I've had people in class, when I ask you to think, if you're getting a thought, like a negative thought, like to examine that, and I want you to think, now, is that a fear-based thought, or is that a thought of love? Because if it's our intuition, it will always be something loving, and people will be able to benefit from it. If it's our ego, it's solipsistic and it's all about ourselves. So I think it's that discernment. It's about, okay, how does this thought make me feel? Who benefit from it? Is this like just a fear-based thought? Is it just anger? Is it rage? Is it something I can do something about? Then it's the ego talking. But if it's something that you can say, actually, you know what? Yeah, I can benefit from that. It's about listening to those hunches and just learning the discernment between the two. Because one will keep us safe and happy, right? One is fulfilling, the other is fear. And it's about knowing the difference between the two.
Which takes, yes, of course, it takes me back to, how does it make you feel? And
exactly.
And judgment, we all are a bit judgmental. I mean, we're human, we're going to be.
Yeah.
But I'm very aware of judgment right now, especially in the times and the world, that it's so easy to be judgmental on this side and, us and them kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I've really had to step back and go, wait a minute, this person's on their own journey and they're seeing their world the way that they are. Is there a way that we can kind of get ourselves out of judgment when we're in situations that trigger us?
Well, I would say it's about having self-compassion. Now, I am going to caveat this. I try to be non-judgmental. I try to be love and light all the time. But if somebody is holding up traffic in a lane and I am just about 10 seconds away from hammering on that horn, right? So, because, we're all human at the end of the day, especially after a long day. So what I tried to think to myself is, okay, step back from this. You don't know what's going on in that person's life. They may be confused that something might be triggering them. They might be off in their own thoughts because somebody belonged to them might be not what they're doing. So, and it gets back to having the compassion for yourself, because how would you want somebody to treat you if you made that mistake?
Yeah.
And I think that's now, I'm not saying like I'm 100% there, I'd be 99.9995 there, but there's still that room for improvement, because again, we're all only human, and it is about having the compassion for yourself, because if you can have compassion for yourself, you can have it for everybody else.
Mm-hmm. I did a conference called Activating Happy several years ago, and it was merging neuroscience and metaphysics together, and it was a bit physical. We went to this conference, and it was overwhelming at times, and I would get kind of grumpy, and my husband would say, "You're not activating happy," and I'd want to just strangle it and go, "Wait a minute, I'm frustrated," and blah blah blah. It's such a joke in our family now that, are you activating happy? Because I say I am not love and light all the time. Hell no. But I do reset myself back to it. I will trip myself up and, be all grumpy. But then it's not long, Graham. It's maybe a few minutes where I will reset myself, because I know, one, it doesn't serve anybody. No. I mean, no, it just makes everybody's life miserable, my life miserable. But I try to get back to the reset of grounding, compassion, loving yourself. Yeah, life is going to be wonky and messy. It just is.
Yeah. And again, a wonderful way to help you get back into that zone is breathing. Just breathe. After all, inspiration. When we think about, that's the term that we have for breathing. You breathe in the spirit, right? So you breathe that back in. And that's why mindfulness techniques, particularly box breathing and stuff like that, to help calm you down. And in psychology, they call it polyvagal technique, but basically it's the control of the breath to calm the body back down. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, and you breathe out for 4. So breathe into the nose, hold for 4, and out through the mouth for 4. Do that for a couple of minutes, and everything just calms down. The polyvagal nerve, because the flow of the air over it just literally calms down the flight or fight response, and the body feels much calmer. And of course, that then helps you connect with your intuition, and you get that sense of peace within. Like in the mornings for myself, I do surround ground shield, that Longo exercise that she always used to teach. So I do that. But I also sit in my office now in the morning, and I give thanks for my day ahead. So I'm sending it out into the universe and saying, divine love comes in and out my door, and all of those who come to me for help are blessed, healed, and inspired. And then we both prosper as a result. Right, which is true. So I try to keep on the positive side of things, and so I start in the morning. But I also sit just for a few minutes. That's what I can do now. Is I focus my energy, and I bring the energy up to the floor like the Kundalini, and I allow it to come up to the floor around me when I'm bringing it down from above. And I just sit and I imagine as I breathe in, I'm pulling the energy up from the earth to keep me grounded and safe for the day. I mean, even now, but just that wonderful, just even talking about it, I can already feel the energy start to flow.
Me too. And I have chills, and it just feels beautiful and nurturing and so safe.
Exactly. And that's it. Remember, my favorite saying is that, we're spiritual beings having human experience, which is what we are. And we need to remember that, because at the core of our essence, and again, whatever that looks like to you is fine. If you want to call it the great kitty cat in the sky, whatever, it's your own boat, you float it. But it's about the energy. We're all energy, and we all have to tap into that source, for me anyway. And I like to be grounded, and I pray for those few moments. I do about 20 minutes of prayer in the morning before I even get out of bed, and then I go to work, and I sit in my office, and I bless and I ground my office, so that when the kids come in, they're healed and inspired. And then the same when I'm working with private clients in the evening. And it's about that. And that I've noticed in my own life, how that has enriched me personally, and it has allowed me to find peace and move forward. And, you know, I sound really terrible, but like, I don't get fazed by things at this stage of my life. And I don't think about material things because my mind is on other things. And my mind is fixed on how can I be of service to this person? And because of that, I'm having a better life, and it's much richer, and I'm meeting more interesting people. Mm-hmm. So getting back to my earlier thing about the ego and desire, my ego wanted me to be a singer, wanted me to get attention, wanted me to be this. But my true desire was always to just help people. And I ran away from it, but it always catches up, and you have to listen to it. The spirit always finds a way.
Graham, I hear you. I just hear you, because I feel like I'm going through something. Mine wasn't really about ego, but I sure didn't want to be out there. I didn't want to be, you know, like this.
But that's still shadow, because it's fear.
It's fear.
Your ego was protecting you. It was your barking dog. Yeah.
Don't think I've conquered fear by any means, but I'm much, much better. You know, you talk about the kids finding their purpose. I think we're all trying to find our purpose. You can be 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, and you're still trying to figure out what your purpose is. I feel like I'm getting much closer. This podcast has done something that has some puzzle pieces have come together and clicked. And it brings all the worlds together, because I love neuroscience. I love metaphysics. I love interesting people in these kinds of conversations. But if you were to talk to a client, let's say a client in their 50s, 60s, and they're going, I know I have a purpose, but I just don't know what it is, which is the classic question. What would be something that you might say to them to bring that out?
Well, Sandi, believe it or believe it not, I get asked that at least 3 times a week. So I always ask them, what made you happy when you were between the ages of 7 and 14? Mm. Let's go back to there. What made you happy? What did you most enjoy doing? I liked telling stories. I liked writing stories. I liked performing. I like this. Okay, so talk to me about that. Whatever it is, I liked maths, I like playing games. That's what you should be doing. Is whatever you played at as a child is really based around your purpose.
I like climbing trees.
Yes.
So I'd be out there climbing trees. No, but I
walking in nature. But think about it. Think about it. You know, what does it symbolize? You see?
Oh, that's really good. That's really interesting. The other thing,
so you interpret it then.
Right. And that's where the tarot can really come in and help, I think, really help shine that light. The other thing that I noticed when I got into tarot, which is, again, I said I didn't think would be a part of my life. And I'm so grateful that it is. But I got into crystals, Graham. And I never had a connection to crystals, but now I have, you know, my quartz crystal with me. I have my labradorite with me when I do these interviews. They're very grounding, and they speak to me. And I don't know what happened there, but do you have any idea of why crystals come into the mix when you start elevating your frequencies? And
do you know, I have actually been thinking about this quite a lot. I have a few crystals. I'll be honest, I'm not an expert, but I have been thinking about this because I went to a workshop recently with Synergy, the Crystal Skull, which opened a few doors for me. It was a very interesting experience. But I think the idea is it's to help us stay grounded. Because think about it, where do the crystals come from? They come from the earth. And once we're exploring all these spiritual paths, we're trying to reach into the spiritual realm, which is, you know, typically associated with the sky, the universe and stuff like that. But it's to remind us of that connection to the earth that we have, that we are physical beings. And I think that's where the crystals come in. Ooh, I'm burning, so that's always.
Oh, so and I just you're burning, and I just got chills throughout my body, and yeah. Isn't that funny how we react that way? But it happens a lot. You know, I think that's spot on, because at night I have this quartz crystal by my bed, and sometimes I just lay it on my chest, and I feel so good. It's like maybe somebody would say a weighted blanket, the way that makes them feel. I feel really protected. And I talk to it and it talks back to me. So there's a real relationship there with crystals. It's fascinating to me. It's the more I get into all of this, the more doors open up. And I find it really exciting and adventurous and fun.
That's because your RAS is looking for it. You're sending out the signals, so you're drawing it towards you. Your brain is actively now looking for these experiences because you want to experience more of them. So you have knowledge of what it should look like. So your brain is now scanning for similar things and drawing them towards you because that's where you're hyper-focused.
And you really do become a magnet for what you think and what you feel. You become a magnet.
Exactly. And you see, you're helping the loop because you're trying to build an online community. So therefore, that whole thing is there. You're exploring your passions. You're helping other people by giving them knowledge. Boom. So everything's all lined up.
It does. It ticks all the boxes. And talking to really, really interesting, smart, creative, visionary people, it does. It ticks all the boxes. And it's fun. It's fun. And we can keep a sense of humor about us.
Exactly.
One of my favorite sayings.
Things.
Yeah, exactly. One of my favorite sayings is, life is too important to be taken seriously. And I do think we take things way too seriously. And life is too important. We've got to have some fun in this, Graham.
Exactly. I always tell people shame is a wasted emotion.
It's true, but it's hard when you're in it.
Yeah, exactly. When you're in a shame spiral. But again, it's like that. You tell people when somebody comes to me and I'm like, okay, again, I'll bring it back to them. Most people are too busy with their own shame spirals to notice yours, So, I mean, as I said, again, you lick your wounds, you've done wrong, but where are you going to go? What do you want to do with it next? I'm more, as a therapist, I would be directive anyway. I don't believe that we should spend hours on hours kind of going over what we already know has happened. We understand, we do, we visit it, we understand why it happened, we make sense of that, but it's like, what are you going to do now? You're going to sit here crying over this for the next 20 years, or are you going to use it as a tool for growth? And that's the way forward, I think.
I love that. And because our stories, I was just talking to a girlfriend this morning about this, our stories become our existence.
Exactly.
And we need to put our stories, it's just a story. It's literally just a story. And we need to find out who we are.
Exactly. I heard the most wonderful expression about shame, and I'm almost sure it was Brené Brown said it.
Mm-hmm.
Shame is the story we allowed someone to tell us about ourselves. But that's the best thing ever. And it is, once we take control of our own narrative, good or bad, we can move forward, And it's only by acknowledging, yes, this has happened, but is it a learning experience? What have I learned from this? How can I grow? Do I want to spend the rest of my life giving power to somebody or a situation? Or do I want to use this as an empowering experience to help other people?
Yeah. Well,
that's our choice.
I'd say that's a perfect place to close this part of our conversation. That was perfect. And I believe that is Brené Brown. And I've said that before. Graham, I have a few questions I'd just like to ask.
Sure.
So we're just going to fire right through those and see where we go. What's your number one strategy to relieve mental distress?
For me personally,
Yep.
it's to go to the gym. I love going to the gym because it's alone time, and it means, and it sounds really awful, I said that it's the time of the day where nobody living or dead talks to me.
I call the gym my church.
Exactly.
I'm very similar, but if I don't have time to go to the gym, if you don't have time to go to the gym, what would it be? Let's say it's a moment in time and you're feeling a little triggered. What would you do?
It would be to sit and try and just control the flow of my breath. Seriously, calm me down. Definitely.
Absolutely. Is there a life-changing moment that shaped who you are today?
There have been many, but I would say probably the death of my partner, I think, because it made me realize, what the hell am I doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there, and that's for another podcast, another time. What's the best advice that you've received in life, personally or professionally?
So this comes up quite a lot with students who come to me who want to be good tarot readers or whatever. And it's about authenticity. Okay. And I remember at one of my first lectures when I was studying to be a psychotherapist, no, it was actually my first supervision session. So I've had several sessions and I thought, Jesus Christ, if I say the wrong thing to somebody, oh my God, they might do themselves in or whatever. I was like, ah. And because obviously, imposter syndrome. And I remember him saying to me, and this is the best piece of advice, he said, if you are being genuine and you are coming from a place of love, everything will mysteriously work out and don't worry about it. He said, because as long as you are there, genuinely to try and help that person, and you're not trying to force and lean on them, and you're just trying to help them find their way. Once you act from a place of congruence and love, everything seems to always manage to find its own way out. So that's it. Just always remember, if you're coming from a genuine place of love, it will always work out.
Beautiful, truly. What advice would you give to someone starting their own self-discovery journey? Because I think sometimes we try to do it all at once and expect results right away. What's a way to start?
Well, first of all, I would say I'd ask you to be honest about what it is you're trying to accomplish. Are you doing this for yourself? Are you trying to make it as a business? Do you genuinely believe in what you're doing? Because so many people want to go down this because they think it's a way of making money. It isn't. It really isn't. And I would say to you, what's the primary reason you want to do that? Then, if it's personal development, what I would say is reach out to a community. And I'd also say to yourself, be prepared to laugh, because you're going to learn an awful lot of lessons along the way. And some of them will be challenging. And when you sit back, you'll just start laughing, going, how did I get through that? Because this journey really shows us who you truly are. It holds a mirror up. And you're going to see the ugliest parts of yourself as you do it. And once you can embrace them and love them, you'll be able to move on. But it is not easy. Otherwise, we'd all be doomed.
Spot on, spot on. What does a successful life look like to you?
To me, I have to say, oh look, my beard is standing on edge. That usually means spirit is connecting with me, as Sandi well knows. And I can never shave for that reason. My party trick is gone. So what I would say is, for me, a successful life, actually, I'm kind of living my best life at the moment, because, and I'm not blowing myself up here because Sandi knows it's true, because she's seen some of them. I get letters constantly from people that I've helped, and strangers and stuff like that. And that's it. It's those little moments taking, and I never got that from being a singer, because I'm living authentically now. I'm living my true purpose, which is to help people find their way forward. And I think it's nothing to do with material things. Like, at the end of the day, what do I want materialistically? I'd like, a house to pay the bills and to, have a few holidays a year. I have that. I don't need anything else. But it's the satisfaction I get from somebody who goes, Graham, I was in a very dark place and you've saved my life. You made me move forward. You made me take ownership for myself. And like, sometimes I can be very hard on clients because sometimes they need it. But, I have the right to challenge because I've earned it and they know it's coming from an authentic place. And I think, it's about being able to make a difference in someone's life when they're at their lowest and bring them out of that place into the light.
Lovely, Graham, truly. And last but not least, complete this sentence. In the past I was, and now I am.
So, this is paraphrasing the old phrase, in the past I was lost, but now I am found.
Yeah, quite true. Beautiful. Graham, where can people find you if they want to work with you or take your courses?
If they want to work with me, they can find me on they just by searching Celtic Tarot Therapy, and sometimes Americans say Celtic, but we Irish say Celtic. And they'll find me on Instagram, Facebook. They'll find my website at celtictarottherapy.com. And they'll be able to contact me there and to arrange appointments for readings or whatever it is they want. On TikTok, Instagram, and actually I have daily TikToks and Instagram posts of the tarot. I do tarot readings every day. And I also have a healing book that I write the names of anybody who wants me to pray for them and send healing to them into. So all they have to do is just send a comment on one of those platforms, and we'll add them to the book and they'll receive a blast. And it's also not just for them, so for sick family members or whatever. And then my witches community, of which Sandi is part of, we meet every second Thursday to help send healing to the world. So yes, so this you'll always get added into that as well. So you'll get like a big blast on a Thursday. It's like you felt.
And Celtic is spelled Celtic.
Yes, and tarot, Tarot, and therapy. Yes.
And we'll put that in the show notes so people will be able to see that. But Graham, it has been a true pleasure, delight to be with you, my friend. It's always joyful.
Thank you. I love our chats. And it's so funny because Sandi and I have known each other for a little bit, and we never really get to have these kind of chats. And when we do, we just get lost. It's great.
Exactly. Or we'll start texting each other back and forth through Messenger or something. But this is a great conversation for me. And I think you shared a wealth of wisdom for listeners that they're going to be able to take with them when they, walk away from this. So, Graham, love you. Great seeing you. Mwah. Kisses to you. And I'll see you soon.
You will, darling. See you soon. God bless.
Okay. Thank you so much. Bye.